all, our moderator is the Executive Director of the Planet and Focus Film Festival, Don Kuzma. Very honored to have you here today. Thanks for joining us, Don. Yeah. Okay, and our panelists. I'll just start with the list I have here. Eric Jensen. Is Eric Jensen here? He's manager of the Toronto Film and Television Office here at City Hall. Eric is a member of 27 years in the Toronto Public Service, having spent 22 years in the field of traffic engineering and bylaw enforcement with transportation services. He has 10 years of experience working with the film and television industry in Toronto and has been the manager of the Toronto Film and Television and Digital Media Office since May 2010 within the Economic Development and Cultural Division. As the manager of that,
to read all that.
He works closely with partner divisions within the City of Toronto. Okay, and then we have Martin Harbury, who, if you were here previous session, you know Martin. As a producer, executive producer, writer, director, and broadcast executive, Martin has won numerous awards, both domestically and internationally, including 2 Geminis, a Genie, and a U.S. Cable Ace Award. He was founder of the television branch of the Academy of Canadian Cinema and Television, serving for several years on the board of directors, in the executive board, and various academy committees. He is a former board member of the Actors Fund of Canada and has taught part-time with Ryerson University. At the OMDC, Martin develops and administers programs for film and television, including the OMDC Film Fund and the Export Fund. John Galway. John is an MBA graduate with 25 years of experience in film and television. Yeah, drink up. John's career.
It feels like dog years, actually.
Starting his career with TIFF and with the launch of Cinematheque Ontario, his interest in development and production led a position with Peter O'Brien's Independent Pictures and contract work on several film and television projects. He then moved into financing with positions at the Ontario Media Development Corporation, the Canadian Media Fund, and Telefilm Canada, where he served as a regional director and the television sector head. Asa O'Leary.
Hi.
There he is. Yeah.
Hello.
Asa has worked in the entertainment media industry for over 15 years. We've got a lot of long-time committed people here. He works in the accounting department of Falling Skies, a TNT DreamWorks production. He has worked on over 20 major film and television projects in his career, working for studios such as NBC Universal, Warner Brothers, Sony Pictures, ABC Disney, among others. He graduated from UBC, getting his certificate in entertainment administration. His passion for both media and sustainability has him very excited to apply his background to Green Spark Group. His goal is to help Vancouver's motion picture industry become an emerging leader in the global sustainable production movement. That's great. And Zena Harris. There she is, Zena Harris. Zena holds a master's degree from Harvard University in sustainability and environmental management and works in the field of corporate sustainability as a consultant at SustainServe Inc., focusing on program management. She has done extensive research on sustainability in the motion picture industry and the cross-linkage between global sustainability frameworks and motion picture industry best practices. If all this sounds like a mouthful, Zena reveals and revels in being simple and practical and can make sense of all the sustainability jargon better than I can. Okay, and one more person we have who's here with us virtually is Kelsey Evans. Can we throw her up there on the screen? There she is. You can turn around, you'll see her on the screen there. There's Kelsey waving.
Hi, Kelsey.
Since elementary school, Kelsey Evans has taken part in many recycling clubs. She has always been passionate for recycling and enjoys creating ways in which she can apply sustainability towards the environment. While working in the film industry, she began her recycling program, which rapidly grew into Keeping It Green Recycling.
The Green Screen project in Toronto has been around for probably, well, I don't know how many years, a long time. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with Martin Harbury, who is in here, as well as we have Sarah, who's actually ED of Planet in Focus while Green Screen was coming to life. Is that right, Sarah?
And
Green Screen Initiative is here in Toronto. And then we'll hopefully rejoin with Kelsey in Vancouver. So Martin, can you tell us a bit about Green Screen and how it came to life? And
Once upon a time, a long time ago, OMDC had a program called the Entertainment and Creative Partnership Cluster Fund. We referred to it.
That was delicate.
There were some other nicknames.
We referred to it as something slightly different, but it was one of the most complicated funds we had, because unlike a film fund or a book fund or any other kind of fund, we were not comparing film projects with film projects. We were asking organizations, trade orgs, various other organizations to come to us with proposals that would cross platform, would bring together partnerships that were normally unfeasible and unlikely, and show us what the benefits would be to the various creative media industries. So it was kind of comparing apples with oranges, with bananas, and frequently with ugly fruit. Anyway, this fund, or this application for Green Screen Toronto was one of the very few that were a slam dunk. It was all of the members of the film and television industry, the trade organizations, the associations, and the unions, and Planet in Focus all came together with this application to green the film industry. And it was a slam dunk. It was the easiest yes that we had pretty much in the entire program. And over the next 2 or 3 years, I think, we had regular meetings, and all of those organizations and we, as the major funder, tried to figure out how this could actually work and what it would be. And we came up with, well, the group came up with some amazing solutions, and a calculator, green calculator, and various other plans. And apart from the politics of it all, ultimately our program ran out of money, and I think many of the member organizations were so busy trying to rebuild the industry, because it was all in the wake of the industry hadn't recovered either from SARS or from the 2008 financial collapse. So everyone was so busy on rebuilding the industry that all energy for the Green Screen project sort of dissipated. And it wasn't until, about a year ago, Don, that Don Quizmo took over as the executive director and said, this is something really good, it's something that needs to live, and through an amazing amount of tenacity and whatever else it's taken, has pulled together most of the original partners, and the thing is happening again. So that's pretty much the history.
That's a good history. We have some challenges, as always, but we're hoping to move it ahead with the partners who are really interested in seeing this kind of happen through. But, is she on the line now? Oh, great. Okay, so while we have her on the line, we'll speak to Kelsey. Yes.
Kelsey, are you there?
You might have to go and see her, Mark.
Yeah, can you speak, say something, Kelsey?
Yeah, me.
There we go. Okay, good.
Okay, so if you could just take us through your presentation now, that would be great.
Sure, no problem. Hello, I'm Kelsey from Keeping It Exciting. Good. I was going to show you some pictures of how our recycling system works for the film industry. We've set up a zero waste program. Is there other people there?
There it is.
Kelsey.
If we move the computer, you're dead. Like in water. So it's just me. I'm sorry. Mark will hold here. So it's two of us. I'm here. We're here.
There's a whole crowd just behind us.
Awesome. Yeah, so Keep It Green Recycling started a recycling program to do a zero waste program for the film industry. So what we do is we go into the production office, art department, construction, shop, set deck, props, and we set up stacking bins as well as paper bins and compost bins. And how it works is the stacking bins are mainly for the kitchen recyclables. We go in and we take all the hard plastic, soft plastic, styrofoam, metals and bottles, as well as doing composting, which you can do all the your food waste, as well as paper cups, paper plates, and oh, there's something. And paper cups, yeah. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so we set up those in the kitchen. Yeah. And those would be like in the stage. So we set up the bins and we empty them once a week. And we go over the whole recycling system so that we can,
So we're gonna go to slide 1, and then you can tell us when to move the slides.
Okay, sure, that sounds good. Yeah, so every office in the film industry has those bins. I think there's one show that's missing recycling setup. We have over 70 clients, and like say one film production will have like 6 to 7 stops, so they may have 6 or 7 setups. Yeah, if you go to the next slide. So that's, those type of bins are meant for the stages. We set those up for larger capacity. We do the hard plastic, styrofoam, soft plastic, metals, as well as styrofoam and bottles. They work really well. We usually fill up all those bins in 1 week in the film industry. And if you go to the next one, that was just after probably 3 shows. That's the inside of a extended tall Sprinter van, and we had about another 3 shows to go. So you can see the system's working quite well.
So what kind of shows were you actually on?
We did Tomorrowland, which, well, Tomorrowland I was hired as a sustainability person, so I went in and set up the Keep It Green recycling program. We do everything from Falling Skies to iZombie. We've done all the feature films here. We're still like getting more and more on set, but every stage has a setup, so we're getting there.
Okay, and what are with the Keep It Green course, like, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sorry, say that again?
Can you tell us about Keep It Green and what you do when you go in and consult on a project?
Oh, sure. So right now, the consulting is mainly just setting up the zero waste program, trying to limit their waste. Right now, we're trying to work more on set. So we've got, if you go to the next picture, those are like transfer bins for compost. So we're trying to get composting on set, and the big issue is just trying to make it work for them. So transport will actually have those bins on their flat decks, and the locations actually will fill them up with the compost from catering and crafty and set, and transfer it back to their large compost bin at the studio. So we're trying to like get it more and more on set, and it's slowly getting there, and it's working quite well. If you go to the next picture, those are the compost bins that they're using on set and in every office. Just like in one office, they'll fill up one of those, as well as on set, the catering company could set up about 4, or fill up 4 or 5 of those bins.
Is that
In a day, yes. And catering actually, when they have the service in effect, they actually go from 14 bags of garbage to 1.
Wow.
Yeah, because mainly all their waste is recyclables and compost.
Right.
It's pretty insane.
So how much time do you take to actually sit down and train the different departments?
I don't really have to do too much anymore. Back in the day, it took a long time just to get everybody on routine, but now people are starting to recognize the bins, so it's actually quite fast.
Are you still there? We lost her. Well, we'll go, yes, Eric?
I guess I'm assuming she's an independent operator, not part of Vancouver Public Administration or Vancouver Solid Waste.
That's right. As far as I understand, she's got her own company. She's a consultant,
Okay.
a consultant. So she's been hired by U.S. productions and I guess Canadian productions to go in and really outfit the production
to that.
Great.
Yeah. Essentially, Kelsey's program, she's got a company called Keep It Green. Kelsey works in the production office. So she simultaneously works in production on the show iZombie, and she's running this company called Keep It Green. So Keep It Green has really become a comprehensive recycling and composting program for all the studios, all the production companies, and the vast majority of shows in Vancouver. So Kelsey did over 100 shows last year, while also working on production. The one major thing that she has done, she mentioned Tomorrowland. Tomorrowland is this huge Disney tentpole that's coming out in the spring. And Kelsey was hired as the environmental steward. So she brought the system from her company, but she was hired by Disney to be the on-set zero waste person. So Disney brought her in, called her the environmental steward, and set up a zero waste initiative. This is the first time that I've seen in all my years of experience that a zero waste program as comprehensive as the one on Tomorrowland has ever existed. So on that note, seeing all of this, I nominated Kelsey and Disney for the Green Screen Award, and they've been nominated. So that particular detailed job is the first time Kelsey's done that. So Kelsey could be hired to do that again in the future, but right now, after 2 years of development, her bins stay put. They're on all the lots, they're in all the production offices, they're in all of the department head offices. So they don't leave. North Shore Studios, where me and Kelsey both work, we're on the lot right now, they give paperwork for Kelsey's program to all incoming production companies and all incoming producers. So she's a part of the welcome package. All of that stuff is already set up. The composting is so comprehensive, the district of North Vancouver brought us a giant garbage can, a giant bin, garbage can size, for compost. So right on the lot, we have a huge bin just for compost. So Kelsey's program is pretty much everywhere in the industry.
And how long did it take her to get to that place?
Less than 2 years. She was adopted by Creative BC, by MPI, the Motion Picture
Right.
Production Industry Association. So industry rallied around her and helped get her cause out.
Right.
So Kelsey's success story is one for the industry because she was supported by the industry. And once they caught wind of this, it just caught on like wildfire. We went from having no recycling, no composting, to it being on every major production in Vancouver in less than 2 years.
That's amazing. Now, if we go back and look at Toronto and kind of look where we're at, we're obviously not at that place right now. That was the intention with the Green Screen Initiative. And so what we're trying to do right now is to rally all of the players in the industry back together to do something like this. We have different plans. So one of the people I have to say is John Galway, who's sitting here in front of us, has been really adamant about ensuring that the Green Screen Initiative doesn't die. And he's been doing that by actually, with Planning and Focus, presenting the Green Screen Award. So I would love John to talk a little bit more about that.
Of course. Yeah, so I guess we've done it now for maybe, there's been 3 or 4 prizes. It started, as many things do in this country, with a couple drinks up in Ottawa, but this time it was for good, not evil. And so Sarah and I were actually kind of meeting about, we were sponsor Planet and Focus and how else to kind of get engaged, and we were going through, so we're a fund that funds feature film, and we had one of those kind of like stop the madness moments where we would at each deadline get 150 projects that would come in 2 or 3 binders full of paper, right? And we always kind of think about production, but obviously there's lawyers and bankers and funds and everything, and everybody complains about the paperwork. So we started to look at our own practices, and one of the ways was to go paperless, which we did a couple of years ago. So it's all online applications now that actually work, and we don't print out anything. And we moved our offices when Bell bought Astral, and it basically was us packing up kind of our coffee mugs and a couple bins, and that was it, because it was all just on, I don't even know what it's on, something. But then we started talking about the rest of the industry and how we could help, and we got a lot of stories about people like this kind of, right, that are champions, that maybe were working on their own shoots or within a production or even within a department. And it's how to kind of recognize those people, and then through more established initiatives like the Green Screen here in Toronto, and what you probably are doing in Vancouver, you hopefully can start to give people the tools that they can, you know, rather than just somebody, like I remember years and years ago in my 25 years of experience in the film industry, I worked on something called Trial by Jury, a Hollywood film that was shot here, let's say 20 years ago. And, you know, there was this one mad guy that was a gardener who collected all the coffee grounds because he wanted them for his garden. And eventually kind of word got out and everybody wanted them for their garden, right? So that was just one guy kind of saying, you know, here's something I can do, right? And so there are these people everywhere, and so we thought we would not only establish an award, but give some money out that people could celebrate some way or another. And so I'm happy that it's kept things alive. And obviously I've been involved in some of the Toronto meetings, but it's a international prize. The winners have been mostly Canadian, but they don't need to be, and from across the country. Score, the hockey musical, one year. Last year was.
Last year it was,
Something.
Melanie Mullins,
Yes.
Dead Before Dawn 3D.
Right, so Dead Before
Yes.
Dawn 3D is a zombie 3D movie, so it's not, it doesn't have, you know, it's not about being a green issue film, although many of those obviously apply. It's just really about looking at the production practices and how they can be reduced, or energy consumption, and, you know, we kind of look at the full gamut of things. And what's amazing about the people that have come together through the green screen and the cluster funding, is that it's people from all around the industry, including the supply houses, where you think, you know, they might be saying, hey, you should buy every light imaginable. They're not, right? They're saying, let's try to figure out some better ways.
It really just takes one or two people. It's interesting because Melanie won the award last year, and she's been greening her productions for the last 2 or 3 years, and it's like herself and her mom and her sister, right? And now actually the reason why Melanie can't be with us today, she was going to Skype in from California, but she's doing some kind of work with the Clinton Foundation now. So it really just takes a couple of people, one or two, to be leaders in their industry and to make that switch, make that shift, and then it becomes regular practice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we've seen, especially if there's some top-down kind of buy-in, like obviously Disney drove that initiative.
Yes.
So then it, you know, when you have your first team meetings or department meetings, people know that this is a serious thing, as opposed to my guy going around grabbing the coffee grounds, you know, where people thought he was a little nuts. But here it's like you know, it's something that everyone needs to buy into. And so that's a good segue to the city.
Yes, it is.
Well, no, my involvement with this started when Planet in Focus came to me. We talked about what had been done before through the cluster funding. And it seemed like it's something we can't let go of. So from the city's perspective, we pulled together with Planet in Focus as many of the previously involved industry stakeholders as we could. We brought in and have been consulting with the Toronto Environmental Office. We will be looking at initiatives like this in discussion with solid waste management for the city to do it citywide. From the city's perspective, in 2013, there was a new strategic plan adopted by council, and part of this strategic plan that covers the entire administrative structure that is the City of Toronto addresses environmental sustainability on 3 separate fronts. So it's not something specific even to the film industry. It's every single city division in every single industry, citywide, in every office, in every piece of property we own. There will be environmental sustainability components built into all of the working plans, all of the strategic plans for these business units going forward. It ties also into there's another document called Collaborating for Competitiveness, and it talks about the economic side of it. And everybody recognizes globally that part of a city being regarded as a destination for excellence, if you will, in any industry, is the livability of that city. So you build back into that the idea that environmental sustainability contributes to livability, and everything kind of is interwoven and interconnected that way. So from the city's perspective, we're simply not going to let this die. We're going to stay on it and keep pushing.
One tool that had been created with this consortium of industry organizations was something called the Green Calculator. And one of the things that we want to do within this next 6 months period is actually to move it into an online digital tool that anybody can access. So that's kind of where we're at. There's a lot of support and buy-in from the industry and industry organizations to like fund that initiative to move that tool online. And what it will do is it will assess each production and look at your carbon footprint and how you can shift your practices to save money primarily, because that's what producers want to see, and also how that would reduce your carbon footprint for each production. And then the idea would be that as we go from year to year to year, there's like a benchmark where productions are compared and contrasted, and then that benchmark would probably be rolled out like 5 years, 7 years, 9 years, something like that.
The other thing from the recent reorg that's happened within at least the economic development and culture division within the city is that we're now an entertainment industries cluster. So through the new film commissioner and the director of that cluster, I'm also trying to push this initiative out through music and events and also tourism and visitor services. So that we can tighten it up within that cluster and then broaden it out under that strategic plan to the other divisions that we partner with and that form part of this organization.
We like the ongoing cluster theme.
I think we all do.
I tried.
It's interesting, right? Because you see the cluster approach in Toronto, and then you see the individual approach in Vancouver. And isn't that interesting? Who's more productive? Well, you know, it's interesting. It takes one champion, right, to really make a difference. But there's a lot of goodwill, and when you have more people on board, it means kind of more coordination. But it could have the same impact or greater impact because it will spiral in a different way. I would love for you folks, because I know you've done some studies looking at different production cities around the world and contrasting the sustainable practices that are happening. We'd love to hear about what your discoveries are.
Okay.
Yeah. So just taking like the various approaches, the cluster versus individual. I mean, it happens differently in different places around the world. So we've got a couple of slides I think will just help you see that the stuff that Green Screen Toronto started back in, I don't know, like what, 2009-ish or something, really started a foundation for this. They were one of the first. I mean, Green Screen Toronto, seriously. And this has been a movement that we've seen develop. So if you want to just go to the next slide. Look, Aza and I, we're great. And what we're really talking about here is what we've seen the industry call it is sustainable production. And this all comes from sustainability, and it kind of is rooted in the Brundtland Commission, how we want future generations to be able to live and thrive and that sort of thing. And industries and how industries produce goods and services and how the entertainment industry produces our product matters. And so sustainable production is really this growing trend. It's really a movement. And so if you look at this, these are really production sustainable. Yeah, that one. We can just keep it there for a sec. These are really hot spots around the world. So the Netherlands, New Zealand, and Australia, and we just, stay there for a sec, and I'll just tell you when to change it. So just, the UK, the US, Canada, these are major sustainable production hubs that we've seen. So like really great things happening. And if you flip to the next one, the Netherlands, we'll just focus on them for a sec because I just want to tell you a little bit about what's going on there, or if you want to.
No,
go ahead.
No, you can speak to the Netherlands.
So the Netherlands, the Film Commission, let's say, in the Netherlands, just hired a sustainability manager for the industry there. So to really focus on getting sustainable production on every film there. So they're taking it from sort of a commission standpoint and pinpointing somebody to go in and make sure that films know about what they can do to be more sustainable or incorporate the sustainable production component to how they make their films.
So sorry, are they regulating it, or it's a voluntary program?
They're paying. No, they're
paying for
yeah.
it to happen.
She's a full-time employee to do this. Yeah, to pay attention to this, to regulate or to manage a sort of a green film fund for their industry. Yeah.
What I was wondering is it a mandate so that like permits and things like that are tied to a benchmark? Or is it a voluntary practices with advisement from a department?
I think it's the latter in that they're not mandating it just yet because people have to learn how to do this. So it's more voluntary, I believe, and it will become probably, I mean, this is the pipeline that we're looking at for the entire industry. And so if they're gonna do it, what does it mean for us here? Is it gonna come sooner rather than later in our film pipeline? So then they've got other industry organizations like this one, Green Filmmaking, who's really taken a lead on putting together just a whole bunch of best practices and you know, all the great stuff that the filmmakers there can focus on to green their production, right? And so the next one, in the UK, this is a consortium-based program. So this is like 12 of the UK's top broadcasters all came together. They have a certification now called the Albert Plus, where it's a bunch of guidelines that filmmakers can follow, and then they can be certified. Yes, my production was sustainable in this way, and then they get a little seal for that. They get a little.
The television with the footprint is actually the seal for sustainable production in the UK.
Yeah.
And they've got 2 shows that have been certified, and it's a 3-star system. So they're saying the highest you could go is 3 stars, but here's an overview of what you can do to have a sustainable production across all departments, across your entire footprint as a production. And the 2 shows have both gotten 1 star. So it's a 3-star system where you can grow as a channel. As Zena said, this is a consortium of 12 channels that paid into this system. So this has been developed internally by the industry. So all 12 channels are on board. Recently, the BBC, within the last year, also hired a sustainability manager to go around and educate on the Albert Plus certification system. So somebody right now is moving through all 12 of the channels, introducing them to the overview of how to engage the 3 levels of sustainable production. 2 shows have the certification. So when me and Zena saw this, we're like, wow, this is really advanced. Like, they're really taking this to the next level as an industry initiative.
And Media Greenhouse is sort of their, how they tell people about all this green stuff that's happening. So
It's the website, it's the place they're producing videos. This is the place of the public outreach and education for the industry and for the public about this initiative. Media Greenhouse is an amazing website. I highly recommend you check it out. And it's educating the public and inspiring the industry simultaneously.
Mhm.
And that's what we really love about Media Greenhouse.
and so, oh yeah.
Sorry, what? This is for their own production, indigenous production,
Yes.
and service that comes in, or how do they relate to service that comes in? Do you know?
Don't know. This is under the 12-channel consortium, so I can't speak to productions that are coming in.
NBC Universal is one of their members, though,
Huh.
that has signed on to this. So probably stuff that they produce there.
Also notably too, you'll see their Sustainable TV Eco Expo. The Sustainable TV Eco Expo, this is the one of the second places, hotspots around the world where we're seeing people come together and have this conversation, have a professional industry event. This is the first annual in London, and in New York, this year was the second annual. So New York has had 2. London had its first this year.
We can go to the U.S.
We'll get to New York in just a second.
So here's New York, or here's the U.S. Let's just talk about a few things happening there. Like we said, Eco Expo, we have Film Biz Recycling. It's very much like Kelsey's program, but they have a warehouse where they take everything that comes off sets that they want to reuse, and then they sell it to the public if they, you know, it's just like a secondhand store basically. So that's kind of how they operate. Again, different setup because Green Biz, Film Biz and Earth Angel, another vendor, these are independent companies. And so it's a different way of doing things too. And just coming out of New York recently, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 totally greened their production. This is a big, you know, obviously big blockbuster. Sony Pictures and Earth Angel actually did their show, much like Kelsey in Vancouver. They've got the same sort of program, and so it's just a good way to show people that the big ones, the big features can do it too. It's not,
Well, let me chime in, Zena. Case in point, you see Emily O'Brien is Earth Angel. She goes by the name Earth Angel. She's an independent contractor who gets hired on shows as Earth Angel to completely green the production. She did Noah, which was a Columbia Sony, and she also did Spider-Man 2. Those are the big movies she greened in 2013. Spider-Man 2, they said when they looked across all the departments, when they did social, environmental, and economic considerations for sustainable production, saved the studio over $400,000. So the producers actually looked at her recommendations and initiated them across every department, reduced their waste by 52%, and saved the production almost $500,000. So this is the poster boy or poster girl for sustainable production. So much that in our trailer, we talk about Spider-Man 2. You'll notice the little, there's Emily high-fiving Spider-Man, and that screenshot, Spider-Man 2, Sony Pictures has created their own, a Greener Pictures certification for their productions. So they've said this is our level of sustainable production certification. So Sony has their own internal certification policy. So that snapshot is at the end of a 5-minute video overviewing how they completely transformed and greened The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Jordana.
I was going to say, it really does amaze me, because there's this sort of daily garbage and waste, but there's this whole other level of waste in the film industry where I was doing some shorts at the Film Center at the CFC, and we were looking for set pieces, and we didn't have a lot of money for things, and I just managed to have an inside scoop. Somebody said, we just scrapped this whole set. It was a big production, and they said, it's all going into the garbage. God knows how much it cost to build this thing. They said, if you can get here in a truck in an hour, you can take all our flats. So I wangled the truck and got there and took, but all that stuff, just massive amounts of stuff going in, and when they finish, it goes into the garbage. It's just nothing gets reused.
Yeah, we're calling that whole thing behind the screens.
So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, in this industry to either independent contractors to pop up and start, reuse it centers or something like that for, like they do maybe in New York. It's a good model, film biz recycling for people. There are just a lot of interesting things happening around the world that we here in Canada can, just look at and continue to build this movement. I just want to mention the big 6 studios all have a sustainability initiative. They all want to look at greenhouse gas emissions. So if you work on any of their shows, it's coming down the pipeline if you haven't seen it already. And like Tomorrowland had Kelsey as a environmental steward, they called her. They are making positions to do the sustainable production activity on their shows. So you'll see it popping up more and more. Like I said, it's a movement.
The studios are paying attention to this, and to the point where they all have corporate social responsibility mandates, they all have sustainability goals and agendas, and Disney being a case in point. And we're here talking, the big news for us that we're bringing out of Vancouver is they just shot this $200 million Disney tentpole called Tomorrowland. I had no idea about the programs that were happening with Disney. Kelsey's a colleague, we work on a lot together, and I heard about Tomorrowland, and Kelsey told me that she was the environmental steward. I said, what did you do? She said, for 6 months we created a zero waste program. I'm like, you're kidding me. She goes, yeah, we diverted 91% of the waste. Sets, props, construction, composting, across the board. I was hired, I had my own office, we went to every department, and I mean, this is a massive movie. This is not a small Canadian feature. This is a massive movie. And they reduced their waste footprint by 91%. I was like, this is incredible. So looking a little deeper into Disney's policy, they are hiring an environmental steward for every major show. So they're out there filming Star Wars 7 now, and they just announced the title yesterday. They have an environmental steward on that show. So all the big studios are starting to do this, except they're not telling the public. We're not aware of this.
So some of them.
That's one thing that's kind of interesting that we should talk about too, because why aren't they telling the public, right? So there's an interesting kind of reasons behind this, right?
There is, but it's starting to change because Spider-Man 2, they completely told the public. They saved all this money, they greened every department. They even went carbon neutral. So they bought carbon credits to offset every area of production. So they also just won a green award for the Environmental Media Association, a Green Seal Award, which is sort of a voluntary write-up program.
So the EMA, the Environmental Media Association, is based in LA, and that's for mostly U.S. I guess. It's a nonprofit in LA, and so that one in the Green Production Guide, the Producers Guild of America, also has offices in New York and LA. They have a best practice guide online. They've got a carbon calculator. You know, all this. They're very much like Green Screen Toronto in that they've got some of the similar materials, and so those are. The EMA has an award ceremony about this stuff. So.
Right, so the point that I'm gonna make, that you guys don't wanna say, but it happens for all productions, right, is that you have producers, you have line producers, you have money issues. And if it behooves them and if it's gonna benefit them to go green and they'll save money, then they will. If it's not, then they won't. So that's why they're not gonna say that every single production that we're on is gonna go green. Or they may hire these environmental stewards, but they may use them internally just, you know, depending on the production. So in Toronto, we don't have big studios like they do in LA, so there's no one organization that will help guide our industry. So what we have is the cluster fund, what we have is the community here, right? So it's a little different than going to Disney or Sony or whoever it is. And it's still important, in some ways it's a little harder because there is not just one governing body, but it's a little more difficult or challenging for us to get the whole industry on side and involved. So it takes more, I think, community attention to it. I don't know what you guys think.
We're trying to build tools that Disney could use when they come to Toronto, and you know, Eric's got like power usage and all kinds of things, but also that $100,000 documentary might use, right? Where you're sitting there thinking, well, I can't afford it, and you know, right?
So the scope is also very different.
The money, how do you make the money work? You say that they save $400,000, is that because they defray the cost of waste removal?
That's a part of it.
Yep.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So
And
they're-
because they have an organization that's selling sets like Ready, Set, Recycle, which actually does exist here.
It does exist, yeah.
Right.
Although I think it's underused.
Very much under.
But
I mean,
there's
it's
no
like-
reason why it can't be used more. Like, but that's the big question. Like, when I approach, I'm a producer, when I approach a project, and I tell my departments I want to try to be green, everybody is like, oh my God, we're never going to be able to do it. It's way too hard. It's too expensive. I can't make it work in my department's budget. So does the city then get involved? Like you say, you guys are creating this initiative. Does that mean in the studios there's going to be stuff there that I
Well,
can kind of use?
I want to try and work with Solid Waste Management, who also are responsible for green bin collection, blue bin collection, et cetera,
Right.
and develop something within solid waste from the city's perspective in providing the studios, the productions with the means to continue to employ the same practices you do at home.
Right.
Be as responsible as you are in your own home with respect to how you handle what your production produces. I mean, the other part of this was there's been the discussion or questions asked about, you know, would you make this mandatory? Would you make this a requirement? Part of the initiative and what came out of it before was this little green production guide. So there's always been the great big Ontario production guide. It comes out every other year. It's gone paperless. It's available online. Part of what we're working on now is getting that previously generated book from 2008 with all of the green industry suppliers updated and get it online and continue to monitor it and continue to manage it and update it so that that can be one of the tools we provide to any production that comes to Toronto to say, here's options, here are a few business cases that have been demonstrated, production savings, and through demonstrating the cost effectiveness to production, you don't end up having to make it a mandatory requirement of your permit. There's always the discussion about competitiveness and industry hurdles and ease or production-friendly environment you try to create in any jurisdiction. So if we can avoid putting up you must do this, as opposed to here's the tools that can allow you to save this much money by doing this, so help us help you guys, take advantage of program, material support, and direction, if you will, or assistance to achieve those goals.
I think it's almost harder for smaller productions, actually. I think bigger productions like Disney, they have so much capital to work with. It's,
Right. Human
I
resources.
understand that they also are doing like a $200 million, one-off or whatever, pilot or whatever it is. And so, yes, they have a huge amount of waste that they have to try to get rid of. So it's probably extremely expensive for them, but their capital is so much bigger. So you talk about $100,000 dock or whatever, like those people are, like, you're bringing the garbage to your house or whatever, like, we do that a lot where it's like, okay, I'm gonna try to take this recycling home and, I'm gonna take a small bag here, but I mean, it's kind of becomes impractical and kind of ridiculous sometimes, so
And
I
also,
think it's.
how's a $200 million per hour film sustainable? Just that in itself, to me, seems also a little bit contradictory, in my view, a little bit. When you're talking $200 million for 90 minutes, we could be saving $500,000, but.
If you make it,
That's a whole other.
if you
Well,
go to
that's-
the producers
we're
and
talking-
the exec
Are you
producers
saying
and
we're
make it
talking-
worth their
we're using
while,
terms
so
that
they
sort of-
save money, then it'll happen. We've both been on film sets where there's maybe 3 or 4 recycle bins around the set, and if you're running around with a grip or something, do you have time to run back and find your recycled? No, they find the nearest garbage right there. And I've seen myself firsthand, both an American producer and a French director, toss things just to the side, not even in a bin, on the ground. So, I mean, it doesn't yeah. I picked it up and glared at them, but, I don't want to get fired. So, I glared at them anyways. So, you cannot, you can put them out there, but you can't make the people use it.
In Vancouver's studio though, right? It's partly that she's integrated into the studio, not the Hollywood studio, but the physical studio. Yeah.
North Shore
The
Studios,
physical
the
production
Vancouver
space.
Film Studios. Oh, there's 5 major studios in Vancouver, and they've all adopted this program. So when you go in, it's there.
It's there, yeah.
And
Yeah.
particularly at North Shore Studios, where I work with Turner and DreamWorks, they give out paperwork advertising that these facilities are there, and it's incorporated into how they just come and do business there.
And
And
is it
they-
incorporated in the rental rate? Is it kind of like,
It
you're gonna
is.
rent our studio, it's gonna cost this much, it comes with a production office, phone, Xerox, blah, 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 and also.
The composting service that's on lot is, Kelsey's service is separate, because Kelsey's service is based on how much you put in. So Kelsey's is based on weight, it's based on weight and volume.
Again, that would inspire people to do this here on some of.
Yeah, I mean, and you,
In order
if,
to save money, I mean.
when you see the collection at the studio, it's unbelievable. I mean, literally, after 1 week, they're lining the hallways to fill up her van.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. I take pictures all
I
the
mean-
time.
We do a lot of feature production in Toronto, but historically, the bread and butter for Toronto's industry has always been episodic TV, which is then going to be here for a longer period of time. They have established production offices, established studio occupied, set construction. There's much more of an opportunity within that less migratory, less transitory style of production to get in and have these kinds of programs in place, which is why I'm so keenly interested in actually making it happen.
And I would,
Sorry.
I would say it's very important for the individual location, city, region to develop this type of, to develop sustainable production in a way that makes sense for that area, the region, the local laws and regulations, all that great stuff. I mean, because you're not gonna, necessarily adopt this exact same thing maybe that either Vancouver has or that the UK has or whatever, because it's just not going to make sense. But we can all kind of, in the act of, let's say, recycling, kind of do similar things, and these best practices are kind of transcend locations. It's just how the city sets it up, or the private vendors set it up might be a little bit different in different locations.
So to me, it feels, I don't know, I'm just making, this is just a comment, an observation. It looks like Toronto was actually ahead of the game back in 2006, 2008.
Yes.
Yeah, actually.
And
yes.
then because of the dropout, now everybody else has kind of moved a little forward, right? Is that right?
Well, what's fascinating, because me and Zena have actually started a company called Green Spark Group, and we're going to be a consulting company to the industry in British Columbia, and we're also making a documentary. And what really inspired us is that when we started looking at sustainable production practices, Toronto stood out. The more we looked into Toronto and the guide that was here and the work that was done, the foundation that was laid here in Toronto was the most inspiring thing for us when it came to this movement. Because
And-
we couldn't believe
Yeah.
how much work was actually done here. You'll see in the bottom right, Green Screen Toronto, that's the logo. Go back. That list is all the productions here that went green. So this was one of the most comprehensive list of reports of shows that went green, that greened the screen. So we found this and it really inspired us because it actually showed great action was being taken, reports were being produced, and results were happening. So me and Gina early on, like, were really, really inspired by Toronto.
And you guys have the most comprehensive guide that was produced in, I don't know, in like 2009 or something, that lays out, somebody, I guess Planet in Focus and Green Screen did a comprehensive environmental assessment of a feature film, line by line, budget item by budget item. If you reduce your waste by 20%, this is about how much money you're gonna save. I mean, so you've got a very comprehensive guide, which really inspired us because we're like, wait a second, they've already calculated this. Nobody else had done this at the time. In fact, the Producers Guild of America, literally, the PGA Green just came out with a cost-benefit analysis this year, but you guys already had it in 2009.
You guys already had it.
So that was a real big foundation for this movement.
The tragedy about all of this, I mean, we did the work, we had the thing ready to go, and for whatever reasons it collapsed internally. It's somewhere we should be able to get back into at the right level. I can't speak for the agency or the government or anything else, but I think that there is a huge argument to be made, and if a plan could be established and a costing on it, there's a case to be made for the province, the city, interested parties to come together and fund putting back Toronto back to where it should be on
So
this.
bite my tongue.
From my perspective, having come into the film office in 2010 and having people a lot wiser and a lot more experienced in the industry that were there ahead of me doing all that great work, basically inventing the wheel, when it was shown to me that the thing actually exists, it was like, okay, we got to get it spinning again. With the Collaborating for Competitiveness, with the city's new strategic plan, with all of this other kind of groundswell of city initiatives that are adopted by council already that apply to every single division in the structure, now's the time where we need to be able to grab all of them together and say, this is what's possible, this is what you have an obligation to do, there's your direction from council to achieve it, let's get going.
Yeah, and
Right now.
these are just examples for you guys to take what makes sense from around the world and incorporate it into what, adapt it into what makes sense for
So
Toronto.
And the very fact that Sony, Disney are already doing this, in fact, should be a case essential and central to the case that is made against all the naysayers who in fact killed this project when it first happened.
So I have to say, there is a plan, we're just trying to figure out who the partners are gonna be.
Got it. Cool.
There is a plan.
And the resources exist, right?
Yes, the resources exist.
How do people get them?
How would we find them? Well, there is a www.greenscreen.com, I believe, or .net, I think it is. So it does exist right now, but it's not up to date.
But the guide goes from like catering, cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything is in there.
Sort of in a process just based on our interns who come in.
Okay.
It had all of the same categories, if you will, that the main Ontario production guide had, and within each of those subheadings, it had service providers that offered green alternatives within each of the strata that exist in the main production guide that applies province-wide. So
The problem is that they may be
outdated or don't exist anymore,
yeah.
or there's new ones that have come online since
That
that
we have to
aren't
capture.
in there. So
Yeah.
it's part of the issue is getting the human resource capital together with the funding, and combing through it, sifting out what's no longer valid, and then culling out that information and gathering all the new stuff and making sure that we have a comprehensive, up-to-date listing, and then stay on it and maintain it. Yeah, and we don't have to print it. We put it online, make it accessible through through the Planet in Focus website, through the OMDC website, through the Toronto Film and Television Office website, and through every, you know, whether you want to go through NABED, IATSE, ACTRA, all of the different, they're all on board. They want to do this. So
If it makes you all feel better, this similar dynamic happened in Vancouver. They started something called Real Green BC back in the day, which was an initiative. They had an industry day. All the parties came together. They got on board with the Recycling Council of British Columbia. They set up set recycling called Real Reuse. All of this stuff was initiated in Vancouver, which we didn't even know about when we started this journey. And that all kind of fell apart too. So they brought the players together, the players and the projects together. They assembled the pieces, and then the markets fell out, and then it just sort of lost focus. And then also, this is the major piece. The studios had to sign up. The studios had to align with the vision within the production center. And every time we were talking to people early on in this conversation, they're like, what are the studios saying? What are the studios saying? In Vancouver, we have 70 to 80% of our business coming from LA, which is different than Ontario, which is about 50-50. Could even be 60-40 domestic to, foreign dollars coming in. So in Vancouver, we're beholden to the studios. So this is where Zena and I had to really get educated. And this is where a movie like Spider-Man 2, doing what it did, is a big shot in the arm for this kind of a conversation when it comes to sustainable production.
And I think
Quebec, just curious to know what Quebec was?
No.
I don't know the stats
No.
for Quebec.
Yeah, nothing jumped out during our research.
I think
But-
the one piece that actually speaks directly to that whole thing was what you mentioned, almost in passing, about the PGA undertaking its own study. I think it was published a month and a half to 2 months ago.
It's very
It's very recent.
And if the Producers Guild of America comes up with the same results and the same, rationale, that's going to give it even more gravity with the studios that, they work with in LA.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the Earth Angel, who greened Noah, Spider-Man 2, she just greened a pilot for A&E. She wrote that 16-page report, which is cost-benefit analysis of going green. And she shows small productions to large productions, if they consider what they're doing and they organize early across all department heads, they can go green and they can have tremendous savings. So this is about doing good and saving. So you appeal to the pocketbook and the vanity of the studios, and it's almost a no-brainer. And that's what's starting to happen. And the 16-page report from the PGA is indicative of that.
Great, well, I do believe it's time to wrap up, so.